everywhere at the same time. It is at its source and at the mouth. It's in the waterfall and at the ferry. It's at the ebb, in the ocean, in the mountains. It is everywhere. The river only lives in the present. We too must learn to live in the present. Our great folly is to feel obliged to conquer time. It is this endless running after money, riches, power, wealth, this feeling that there isn't enough time, that obscures the truth.
Unfold the scrolls, let the dust settle. Upholds holds with the dice I chose to roll. Tools for deciphering, look what was read. Think I saw it once before in the book of the dead. Yes, and ever since back when they showed me and stampeded the beats like I heard of Mongolians. Work hard, preserve knowledge like the Abbasid. Words ball, rocket like the Kaaba at a masjid. Slow your roll, sun stole your roll. Let it tell a whole story like a totem pole. Behold the flow with its Tai Chi alchemy. Verbal intercourse on a Waikiki balcony. And all that glitters ain't gold. The children been told, get that vision on the road. Highway robbery, check the chronology. Sometimes you gotta dig the depths for that possibly.
Lights, cameras, and actions, glamour, glitter, and gold. I unfold the scroll, plant seeds the stamp, feed the globe. And we take it back, y'all, to bring us up, We take it back, y'all, to bring us up, Lights, cameras, and actions, glamour, glitter.
The hip-hop writer is a creator, composing, understanding words of culture brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally. Pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craftwork that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly and uses his ears to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home-sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God, stepping in score, soon as Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrator Low. And we're on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media, where every intrigue will have its own show, every incredible thought will have its own episode, and every timeless insight will be archived. And this show is about my element of hip-hop, the writer of what I call art on art and science on music, the only show in the history of all hip-hop radio, podcasts, whatever you want to call it, on this hip-hop writer element that I, a veteran of over 20 years, helped pioneer. And what do we have here? You know, the ebook is a week or two or three, depending on where I put that due date. I'm in the very last stages, looking great. Everybody that needed the help helped, and I'm grateful there'll be some events to promote it. But my book is called The Filtered Real, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance, where I try to give just a selection. I can't cover everything. I make these lists and everything of essential MCs and things like that, but nothing is exclusive, definitive. But it is the ultimate lead off into understanding this decade that we are coming to an end with, you know. And that book is definitely coming soon, and it's going to be filled with art on art and science on music. And I really enjoyed making it, I gotta tell you. Putting everything down, trying to give credit where it's due, having the opportunity and the honor to even catalog something that has just gone without being cataloged, you know. But I'll say this, you know, I always like to begin with giving a little addendum to the show I just did. And there's two shows I did last week, one of them being this Power Right Show 50, episode 50, and I had the Great Sauce Heist. There's really nothing to add on to that, you know what I mean? Just to remind you all to go do the knowledge to that. Check it out. Sauce Heist is exactly why I do this stuff. You know what I mean? MCs that are working hard, making great music, and really doing something creative that if you don't listen twice, and if no one's there to listen twice and point it out and build with them and interview them and point it out, then you wouldn't really know. Everything is so promotion driven. You're doing things for promotion, and it's what happens in a capitalistic world, even when we try to counter it, and it just becomes militancy and pseudo revolution, or lesser revolution disguised as counter capitalism. It still just becomes promoting of something, counter capitalism, a better version of it, a reform version of it. And that could be frustrating to anyone that's really thinking about it on a deeper philosophical level, as I do. And if I'm doing this to you, the reader, then the listener, not the reader, but definitely the reader, when you read my book and my works, this is something that we should never forget, because we can never realize how to fully realize revolution if we don't properly gauge what we have done right now. If we assume it's revolution, just like anything, like if we assume what we have done is classic, then the greater classic, or even the classic itself, with the one that is actually proven to be such with criteria, won't stand to be born. It won't manifest itself. It won't be built to be born, because we would have assumed that it already exists. But Source Heist, there was so much more to go into, and I hope that when you go into Wasabi, you listen deeper, or after the addiction of those great tracks that he chose, and you go back into his catalog to see the development that I was speaking to him at that present moment in time. That if I speak about a possible development from him and a development to a point, go back and see how he had developed that way, because we listen to this music from our people of the black diaspora that made this culture, so we could understand the way that we have developed, the way that we have become. And you can hear a lot of that when you go back into his catalog and see that. And you often see that. We don't usually appreciate that, because when someone makes a great work in these ever-going processes of becoming, we get stuck on where they have become great, where they have become classic, and we don't really appreciate that process of becoming, especially if that process of making, let's say, a classic, or fulfilling our obsessions with more works like that classic, then we get frustrated. But that's not the case. You know what I mean? That shouldn't be the case, and we shouldn't let that be the case. But go back to Source Heist catalog. It's Wasabi, I really feel, is just the first stellar work. I'm not even gonna say classic, because I think that is lowballing Source Heist. I think he has so much more greater works in the tank. You know what I mean? In the future. And then the other show I did, I had a little addendum tweet, because when I did my last that you can go check out now, I think it's episode 263, the last episode of Classic Storm Radio I did with DJ Toshi. We had Percy P, and one thing about Percy P is that we had this great conversation off air, and there was some realizations that I told him about, that I really felt about, and I tweeted these as truths. And I had said that I think his talents and works make him an ultimate literal definition of an MC's MC's, or your favorite MC's MC. I'm going to talk about Gibbs a lot later, Freddie Gibbs, and a lot later. And a lot of people really aren't, they enjoy Gibbs, as you should, because of his lyrical dexterity, his verbal dexterity, his ability to say so much in such small amounts of time, crowd so many words in a bar. And, we often forget that, the pioneers of these techniques are people like Percy P, and people like legends that have legendary catalogs, like, Organized Confusion, Pharoah Monch, and others. The people that this is a literal example, the people that they knew coming up and were inspired by literally were Percy P. I mean, that's literal with Prince Poe and Pharoah, because they went to high school with Percy. He was that older brother that was around their way, that they were seeing on the come up. You know what I mean? So he really is that MC's MC, and we don't have the luxury of having an openly available, 15 album catalog from Percy P, like we do other greats. We have, a really long catalog of tracks here, tracks there. But if you ever sit with Percy P, you're going to hear so many stories of how these songs came to be and how other people's careers spawned from one song that he did with this person, a song that he did with that person. And it's just amazing how I called him. When I was talking to him, I said, what, Percy P, you're literally a hip hop ligament. You know what I mean? You're like a ligament. You have brought together the muscle of many of the greatest acts and ideas. I mean, he literally is the first great model of New York City independent works out there. Selling his tapes and everything was really his thing. And when people like J Live, Thurston Howell III, Immortal Technique, who literally told me years ago that he basically went platinum, on the street selling him, I'm forgetting the name of his first album, Volume 1. But don't get mad at me, Max. I know Max is going to get mad at me. Immortal Technique, nut. Revolutionary, Volume 1. You know what I mean? Let me go confirm that because, he'll take away my stripes if I get that shit wrong. You know what I mean? I haven't heard this album in so long. When you catalog so many albums anew and you stay fresh, you don't get that time to really enjoy an older catalog. You know what I mean? But yeah, Immortal Technique, Revolutionary, Volume 1. You know what I mean? He literally, and you can imagine how much Volume 2 did. And that footwork. That footwork to get this album independently out there, that was inspired by Percy P. The first place that you could independently go and pitch a record to, a full-length album that isn't on really any major album. Major label. You go to Fat Beats and see if they'll sell it there. That's what you used to do. You know what I mean? And we'll talk about, obviously, because of Gibbs, we're going to talk about Gibbs and Madlib, and we got to talk about Doom. Doom was basically put out as as a lead-off experiment in Babito Garcia's record label Fondulum, And where do you think they were at least knew that they were guaranteed to get some wind out there and to get some distribution, like to get some shelf space? If they got it nowhere else, where were they going to get some shelf space? They knew they'd get some shelf space at Fat Beats, you know what I mean? And so, as far as the independent, a pioneering juggernaut, a Fat Beats staple, so that makes him a New York City staple. That's Percy P, you know what I mean? And it's just amazing, you know what I mean? But I wanted to read you something. I always talk about this is art and art, and this is a very fragmented piece. You know what I mean? I never really it's very stream of conscious though. It's literally 4 different fragments, but they kind of go together because of the unity of the understanding that is presented in them. But I couldn't even make a name for it though. It'd probably be like, I don't know. I'd probably name it after a Sean P song, you know what I mean? Or some MC that just goes off kilter like that, you know what I mean? But it went like this, right? 77 ideas prevailed. Art and art destroy, respect, fake. Science on music and an appreciation curriculum shot in the dawn early might. In a fortnight by Pelon's moonlight. This soul's core aims away. Every day be baby's day. Right I born. The only analyst of the invisible renaissance. Grit scripts listened in integrity. A telling on the told tales. Open them to you so they may not be mistold. With these 26 bristles dipped into the colors of my character. Dramatic motions to expose the wushu. Fight for a song. A collective whistle from the wild fossilizing the filtered real. That will let it be born for all times, and tomorrow crates can excavate us out of our own savagery. Justice is a judgment of hearing. The rhythm of a crime in the first snare. that will one day equalize in the kicks. Seeds in the hi-hats everywhere, thickened bass lines curve around the earth, wet in the verses, a grooved union. It's all just wrath and writing, the last friendly for the fiery. Revolution's the weapon to trigger enlightenment, power right to skill is straight, the worded element. From the lone low life wearing the home-sewn garment. The original Rudy Lowe showed me the 2 L's double down in peace. Peace. But, you know, there's a lot of hip-hop out there, right? And, by the way, that piece is going to be, you know, you won't find that piece anywhere. That one's one of them that is going to be in the book. I published it a long time ago, and I put it together, you know, and it'll be featured in the add-on section in the upcoming book, The Filtered Real, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance. But you know, one thing you like about publishing though is that, you know, when niggas bite though, they can't really say that they invented shit. You know what I mean? Waiting for a nigga to bite shit. You know, that way I can show, you know, I got the pub dates and all that kind of shit. But yo, let's talk about real quick about some ideas. I deliberately make these shows with fragmented ideas because I like to write all this stuff down eventually. A lot of this stuff. And I don't want it to lose its feel in the written word. So I like to throw it out to you as just stream of conscious stuff, things I've been thinking about. That way we could flow and it doesn't come out so obsessively scholarly. Although there'll be many moments where I'm just like reading paragraphs of shit that I wrote, you know. But the first thing is that before I get into the major music stuff, LPs, EPs, I'm usually talking about collections, but I did talk about that Nas Al Jarreau of rap because it brought up a lot of ideas, you know what I mean? You know, I was saying this off air. Once I saw that he called himself Al Jarreau of rap, I knew immediately that I wasn't going to like it when I first heard it. You know, because I know Al Jarreau's music. I have all of his albums from 75 to like 81. And I stopped because when I start collections, if I'm not obsessed with your collection, but I really like it, or I didn't like the way it developed in the 80s, because you know the 80s is the dark ages for a lot of genres too. It's absolutely the dark ages for salsa. But it's also kind of it's a semi-dark ages for R&B also. You know, people just go, oh, Prince and Michael Jackson, but there's a lot of shitty music in the dark ages, and soul music didn't really have good musicianship in the 80s. It was destroyed by disco, you know what I mean? So a lot of hand clap snares, weak stuff, and they put back 808 drums and they tried to fix it. But except for Prince and stuff, you're not really... And mind you, I'm comparing it to the 70s and the 60s. We're talking about bands and stuff. You can't say that a band like Cameo, the peaks of Cameo in the 80s, is really on the level of Sly and the Family Stone. Or, look, I'm going to be real mean. Is even on the level of Charles Wright and you know, and his band, you know? You know, and by the way, that's I don't know if I have time for a real crate, but Charles Wright, and I think it's the what is it, the 103rd Street? What's it called? The Charles Wright and the Watts 103rd Street Rhythm Band. That's a real underground crate in the 70s. You know what I mean? And in the 80s, I don't find a funk band that is that ill like that. You know what I mean? There aren't funk bands that are as live and has such a pure groove essence like the Meters and things like that. You know what I mean? Come on, Cameo, things like that. That's nice. You know what I mean? It's nice. It gives you some hits. You know. And by the way, I'm just gonna put it out there, right? I'm a person that I dramatically love 70s Earth, Wind, and Fire way more than 80s Earth, Wind, and Fire. I almost never listen to 80s Earth, Wind, and Fire. I usually have everything in the playlist for 70s Earth, Wind, and Fire. Because, you know, if you listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire, their first couple of albums, they were very funky. Not very unique. They were much like Sly, you know, other groups, Meters, but Kool and the Gang early on. And then they developed into, like, you know, what they became, you know, in the mid-70s, you know, the Reasons. And that shit right there, you know what I mean? And the 75 on. But I don't know, from the 80s, I don't know, it was a little bit too pop. It's not a go-to, you know, and I'm being nitpicky with great groups. We're talking about legendary groups, and I'm nitpicking, you know what I mean? But generally, I consider the 80s a down period. And I blame most of that on disco. It took away a lot of musicianship. You know what I mean? So the 80s can produce music that is extremely addictive, but not really that musically, like, dope to me. Like, it's not really that, exciting, It's very rote, a little bit stale, you know what I mean? It's just that we grew up in the 80s, you know what I mean? So we like that cheesiness. You gotta admit, that's the cheesiness that we like. There's a cheesiness in the 80s, you know what I mean? And I dig it, you know what I mean? But Al Jarreau's different. The reason he's a hard pill to swallow, that's a horrible choice of words, though. Can we rewind that? Can we, like, just chop that off? Hard pill to swallow. What am I? It's either Matrix or some pause shit. But it's really hard groove to get it. His scatting and his scat style of singing is so unique. It's not really like the way they used to scat. Let's say, like, if you digging old school cats like Dizzy or Ella Fitzgerald. Is certainly not like that. Or even Anita Baker's scat style of singing. Where she would groove, start off a sound of a word and just not really say the word and just be a sound. The great, lovely, incredible, immaculate Anita Baker. I'm obsessed with Anita Baker. But so when I saw Al Jarreau rap, I was like, oh man, if he's really gonna do it like Al Jarreau rap and succeeds, the first couple of listens is gonna sound awkward to me. For me personally, the experience of listening to Al Jarreau for the beginning times, before I caught the groove, was very much like when I first started studying flamenco. Because flamenco, they don't drop it on the one. You ever see a flamenco singer or a female singer, like the singers, they clap, they kind of hit hard, and they're not really on the, they're not on the one, like, dun, 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 like James Brown shit, which is the classic model. So their beat rhythm is different. It's African, but it's not really West African if we wanted to go all the way back to roots. And Al Jarreau, for some reason, he's very off. It's very unique. And if you only know Moonlighting, remember that shit, Moonlighting? You know what I mean? Moonlighting is probably his most popular song that he sang that was as standard as you could get. Like, where he sang, and it was probably like, yo, give us a theme song, but don't be going nuts on this shit. You know what I mean? Just sing this shit regular. But his other songs like that. If you want an example, listen to Otis Redding's Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. All right? And then you should know that song, all right? Shame on you, If you're my age and you haven't heard that, your crates suck, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even care about old crates. But Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, listen to Otis Redding, and then go and listen to Al Jarreau's version of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. If you don't recognize the lyrics, you're like, yo, this is two totally different songs. And not just the music, it's the way he's singing it. It's not even the way he's singing it, you know what I mean? It's totally unique, which I find dope. I appreciate that shit over time. But the beat is not really hard, but as well, it is unique. I thought that the live trumpet playing by Keon Harold, though, I really liked it. If I remember correctly, now I'm forgetting if it was trumpet or sax. I only heard this song like 5 or 6 times, but and I was really focusing on the lyrics. But what's interesting is that Nas, he didn't really scat on the song. He delivered his verses like a scat. And that's what the innovation is, This song actually technically, as a technical song, ranks with his other songs like Rewind and shit like that. You know what I mean? Or it Gave You Power, because it's really the technique that he's really doing, you know what I mean? He's literally giving you real word verses, but he's doing them in the same nature by which Al Jarreau would scat them or scat anything. I mean, it's just so effortless what Nas is able to do. And when you hear it the first time, the real flaw, what we worry about all MCs is if they're out of the pocket. And unfortunately, because Nas has just given us the Nasir album with Kanye West, which was really not an album that has a good longevity to it, which is very rare in the Nas catalog. It's very rare. For Nas albums Nas albums don't always hit immediately, but you could tell that they have longevity, and Nasir didn't have that feel of longevity, unless Kanye gives out those instrumentals and lets somebody else fix that shit up though. But so we kind of felt like Nas was experimenting so much that people assumed Nas is in the pocket throughout that Kanye album. He's in the pocket. People don't know how to listen to shit. He's not out of the pocket on any of those songs. He just rhyming at a cadence or at a tempo, a cut tempo. That's a better word. A cut tempo that he usually doesn't do. So it doesn't get us into a rhythm. If you ever listen to Nas songs, that's why we like him we love him even on beats that aren't great, because he tends to catch us and groove us into a tempo, that we get into. He's great at absorbing us into his pocket. It's funny that he had that verse about absorb. I don't absorb this shit, But on that Al Jarreau rap, there's so many things that he did on that, you know what I mean? That it just does, and something that Planet Asia said on the social media, he said it to me, was art is not always supposed to be easy on the first listen. Now I can see if he did a whole album like that, it would be different, but I bet live with an orchestra, the shit would be crazy. Just like Sauce Heist said last week, where he makes songs and thinks about how we perform, which is crazy for a young brother like that to think like that already. Planet Asia, one who has performed all the time, they think about how a song that they make would go over with a live audience. And actually, Al Jarreau rap would really, really be a live track. Like, it really would have the great interaction, from the audience. It really would play out live. But it brings up some other things too. I just want to bring them up because they're big deals in how I see things. One of the best books I ever read from an MC was Fight the Power by Chuck D. He wrote that in 97. And he talked about how a veteran should always experiment. That means if they have successful albums, they should always experiment somewhat in the albums that they make. And this goes with what Planet Asia was saying, though. We like MCs to experiment. Like a guy like Planet Asia, he has so much work. He could give us a whole experimental album. So like when he did that one, when he did Anchovies with Apollo Brown and decided to do like a drumless album, which he did drumless stuff a long time ago. But it did it for a whole album though. So people thought like, oh, he's just doing what Ka's doing. Maybe so, because Ka did the whole thing and Ka was really the peak of it. But to hear Planet Asia's style of emceeing, which is far more dexterous than what Ka brings, it was great experimentation to see how that would work. And it's just a great challenge for an MC. And to see that, even though Apollo, he doesn't really blow me away with the depth of his crates, he does appeal with the quality of the crate. So he'll give you a Bobby Blue blend that has been used a couple of times. But it's a nice Bobby Blue blend, you know what I mean? And it's nice, But, Chuck D said that, and I've always thought that was a real thing, you know what I mean? But some thoughts I had. I think it makes sense that Nas is dissed for not going into the Illmatic blueprint, because Illmatic is like has become the perfect blueprint, you know what I mean? To use to succeed, you know what I mean? But if you do it, let's say if Nas did do that, how long would he do that? You know what I mean? If you experiment and have the career Nas has, right? When do you go back to that blueprint? It would be almost like an admittance of failure of the other works, right? And then also, in this no man's land, this trans-real universe, where, Nas's popularity finds himself in. He just can't make a record, say like the new Inspector Deck record, Chamber Number 9 that I just heard. It's a banging record. There's nothing weak. Absolutely nothing weak on it, let alone sell out. But the Chamber Number 9 record is completely conformist, I'm not saying he conformed, but it conforms to and doesn't have any challenging lyrical content, new patterning, or anything that goes against boom bap ideals. In other words, it could play as a Czarface album without having to suffer through esoterics, I don't know, old Jay-Z-isms. I feel like esoteric rhymes like Jay-Z 96, but without crack involved. It's a little annoying to me, He does that double time stuff, and then that, you know, when Jay-Z used to do the double time stuff and then do that conversational pausing. I found that shit annoying when Jay did it though. So it's like, then you're doing it. But now on Deck's side, for say, going back to this, when Deck does a basic boom bap album, that's quality. He's not gonna get harassed for it, for not being innovative, even though he's one of the few Wu members that could experiment with mad flows, because he has really no limitations verbally. You know what I mean? He could do any flow really. But I think in the Wu, RZA has over experimented so much, where his percentage of success with just the experiments, like when you, let's say like with Wu albums or like RZA work, if we collect the experiments that he does in every work, he literally has lowered himself to almost like a 25% hit rate. Where like 1 out of every 4 RZA records you go. Me personally, that 1 out of 4 still blows me away. Well, I'm like, yo, wow, what a crate. Like, where did he get that? Or like, well, look what he was doing here. But sometimes like the other 3, you're like, oh man, he should have left this one. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it really mars an album, because now you got like 3 songs that you don't like. That shit sucks, because that's like 3 songs in a 12 song album, 3 songs that suck is unacceptable for Wu. Unacceptable for RZA, you know what I mean? But when we, you know, so we don't mind a standard boom bap album for a guy like Deck, a talented Wu member, you know, who never, because at the same time, Deck never created a classic solo record either. So it's not like Raekwon where we expect one. I liked the first, that's a long story. I can't even give that now. But Uncontrolled Substance, the version that everybody got was very good. The original version that I ended up reviewing for Vibe, though, which ended up being my first experience in plagiarism. Hey, Vibe. But that was such a more gritty record, you know. And even if they told me it wasn't mastered and shit, they needed to master it so it keeps that grit. You know what I mean? But let's say this though. Today, right, is the anniversary of Nas's Untitled album, right? Really untitled, because it was supposed to be the nigga album, and they didn't allow him to call it that, which was pretty whack. You know what I mean? But in 2000, because it needed to be called that because it has so much potency. But in 2008. Today, I see people posting it and heralding it because it's an album that grew on many people. But by 2008, I've already heard hundreds and hundreds of albums. So I already knew that one was going to grow on me, even though I wasn't going to like all the beats. I just had to find a way to appreciate the beats that I'd already had. You know what I mean? And it's heralded because Nas's concepts, lyrics, and song crafting are so stellar that's where the longevity comes from. You don't always go back to the beat. You know what I mean? I don't know what kind of listener the average person is, though. But I think it's a more worthy listen to go back to something that has incredible song craftsmanship, like a Razkaz, Soul on Ice, Nas's Untitled, versus a Group Home, you know, the Group Home Living Proof album, 95, you know what I mean? Or I don't want to mention anything else, though, but, you know, just straight albums that are really based on being beat albums. You know what I mean? Because this is a listening music, and in my life, I'm going to be listening to that more, you know what I mean? And in the history of hip-hop, I could find me a banger album to work out to that has lyrics that Group Home isn't going to... Yeah, the Gangstar records I would go to as just a beat album because Guru's lyrics are so profound, and also something that has massive longevity, that people really slept on the song craftsmanship that Guru had. But listen to this. Nas's work is the epitome of what hip-hop music became at its peak, a listening music. You know what I mean? And a difference between Nas and Wu, and in these placements of expectations, is that both consist of legendary song crafters and lyricists, but Wu has always been expected to be a leader in that rugged music. They always are expected to give us bangers and music that blows us away and gets us riled up. You know what I mean? They're expected to give us bangers. You know, Nas, the magic that he did, and you know, I don't know if I liked the experience the whole way, was that he didn't go that way. So he wasn't his music didn't have to come with any expectations. You know what I mean? They just had to be there. If you're still expecting to hear the greatest boom bap you've ever heard when you hear a Nas album, you're not really a hip hop purist though. I don't like dissing people and calling them hip hop purist is a good thing. Why do we always have to say purist and say like that's a bad word? You know what I mean? That should be something else. You know what I mean? But we'll get into that later. But I think there's negative and positive like that. But altogether, though, that riff I had was all in that Al Jarreau rap song. Listen to a couple of songs from Al Jarreau. Not just Moonlighting, you know what I mean? But listen to some other songs. The ones I suggested, listen to some other albums. Also, I forget the name, but in 76, he did a live album. Check that album out. And then also study those songs with the actual recorded version. So even his live versions of his own recorded versions, which are already off kilter, are even a little bit more off kilter. So to be, you know, Nas really achieved what he set out to do with that. You know what I mean? And I just thought it was dope. You know what I mean? And at the same time, I keep it real, I don't want to hear a Lost Tapes 2 where all the other beats sound like that. You know? And I don't think they can, because that's a special song. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I would have released that song first. You know, I would have released a banger first, a straight up track, and then I would have released Al Jarreau rap. You know what I mean? Then it would have, you know, would have been there. You know, I don't know why. You know, Diddy nearly, you know, he nearly ruined hip hop with the A side, pop A side, hardcore B side, and then the great artists, the real dope ones, they don't know how to use that. You know what I mean? Use that shit. You know, release those bangers on the underground, and you know, give the more commercial stuff or the more appealing stuff out there. But I had these two tweets. Let's talk about this whole, oh man, this whole MF Doom shit. You know, where Gibbs, he was on Rosenberg. You know what I mean? And is also was said to be, which in my memory, I can't think of another time, but where Madlib ever went to a big radio station and had an interview. But I can't remember a fucking time that they played a Madlib cut either. You know? It's funny that Rosenberg was like, oh, look, oh, wow, he's clapping it up. Oh, we never had Madlib in the studio. This is great. Like, you know, it's almost facetious. You know what I mean? Like, hey, wow, we got you in the studio. This is amazing. You know, like, oh, shit. Hey, when was the fucking last time Hot 97 played a Madlib produced cut? You show me. When did they play? Did they play a Loot Pack record? Did they play anything from In Search of Stoney Jackson? You know what I mean? Did they play Mad Villainy? And did they play anything from the Beat Conductor series? You know what I mean? Or maybe they did, right? When all these guys are talking shit and loving some Tiger and loving some bullshit out there. You know what I mean? Were they playing any Beat Conductor tracks in the background? You know what I mean? You know how they do, right? They'll have like they'll be talking about the most bullshit rap out there, and then they have like the hardest joint in the background. That shit used to always piss me off. You know what I mean? Like hard shit. You get the hardest shit. You know, I remember one time in like the old 2000s. I remember, I'm forgetting the name. It's not Right Back at You is infamous. I'm forgetting the name of the song. But on Gangstar's Moment of Truth, the song with Jadakiss, they made a video for that. It's one of the best songs on Moment of Truth. No, not Moment of Truth. The Owners. Maybe that's why I can't get the song. I'm getting the albums wrong. 2003. And the Owners album, the last Gangstar album, to me a classic. One of the great songs that they made a video of was with Jadakiss. And that instrumental, I used to hear a couple of times in the daytime as a bed, you know, behind the disc jockeys. I'm not calling them DJs, disc jockeys of Hot 97. And it's such a slap in the face. You know what I'm saying? it's a slap in the face. I'm sure there might be some royalty that they would get, but it's a real slap in the face when they used to do shit like that. But on this interview, right, what was more telling, that Gibbs was really getting emotional. You know what I'm saying? It really got emotional because this album was written while he was in danger of doing a serious bid overseas for being falsely accused of assaulting a woman. And, you know, he obviously was set free and all that stuff. And it was the DNA. There was no, you know, they couldn't link him. And, you know, a typical railroad the black man, but just, you know, the foreign version, you know. And the only time that happens to white people of note is those movies, though. You know, where they capture the white man in Cambodia and he goes, "I'm an American," and then they lock him up and shit, you know. Chuck Norris movies, you know what I mean? Where Chuck Norris comes and gets you, you know what I mean? But when Madlib comes into the studio, I had this misgiving because Madlib comes into the studio and they start talking, and it comes into the context of where Bandana is, and he, you know, he's saying like, you know, it just ended up with being Mad Villain, and you know, I like the setup here. They always talk about other people's shit, you know, instead of saying, hey, you know, this album really ranks with the greatest things that Madlib has done, so it's up there with the J-Lib, or you know, he kept talking about J-Lib, Mad Villain, all of that, you know, and mind you, I don't put Bandana up there with J-Lib. It's totally different albums. Let's keep it real. Madlib and J Dilla were sloppy MCs. Were and are sloppy MCs. So where do you go comparing a very lyrical record to two MCs with great crates rhyming sloppy, you know what I mean, on each other's tracks? Made a great record, but there's no way that that's an MC seeing record, you know? But we're going to get in. I'll say more about that as it goes along. But the real issue was this. People got upset. We all had an issue with it. Me as well. I'll read you my tweets. You know, Gibbs said that he got tired of being compared to the Mad Villain record, and he wanted something that could match up with that. Oh, that's great. Compete and make something that could herald that. And you want to be up there with the classic albums. But then he kept going. And he goes that, you know, because he rhymes, because, you know, he's got to, because, you know, he rhymes better than Doom anyway. Doom can't. He said Doom can't rap. You know what I'm saying? Doom can't rap. That's like saying Curry can't shoot. Doom can't rap. Curry can't shoot. You know what I'm saying? That's, you know, you literally said a flaw. You said an error. You know what I mean? They needed to buzz you right there. Buzz you. You know what I mean? Mute the mic for a minute, though. You know? Rewind that, Gibbs. You know, he said some false shit right there. So he said he was not just better, but he said that Doom couldn't rap. It was what my issue was. And then later he said he can't rap, and he basically proved it. Gibbs said he proved it because, you know, he knocked Doom. He was on a song with Doom, and he knocked him out the box. And the only song he did with Doom was last year's one of my favorite albums last year. From I thought who's amazing, DJ Muggs, who I think, by the way, though, I put Muggs up as a better producer than Madlib, but there'll be certain reasons for that. DJ Muggs, Day of the Assassin, right? And there was a song called Death Wish. Doom started in how many flows in the slow cadence does Doom innovate? Because he did another one on that. He did a slow flow, talking flow, and it was about the integrity of the entire art form. And it was dope. But Gibbs came back. Gibbs came back and flowed his ass off and had some great lines and had more bars. So he basically did the cheat, you know, because Black Thought is one of them, though. You know Black Thought cheats, right? Because Black Thought, he be bombing everybody's bar. He bombs everybody in their track because he's doubling up. You know what I mean? Like, you know, when he rhymed with Benny the Butcher, would Black Thought so easily destroy Benny the Butcher if they both had the same 16? I think so. But it's also not fair because, you know, he's given 40 bars while Benny's given just 16. You You know what I mean? This is like comparing, this is like James Harden shit. You know what I mean? James Harden, he's got the ball the whole time. You know what I mean? The usage rate is different. Gibbs' usage rate was different. So, but at the same time, though, you're not better than a legend because you got him on one song or because you made one album that we could talk about with respect to that one. Let's go into this, though, for a minute. I said it appears great that Gibbs promo masturbates his album above Mad Villainy and says he's better than Doom, but it's ultimately weak since Doom absolutely dominated the 2000s with almost a handful of classic albums. Another reason 2000s is the dark ages, as these truths go unknown or masked. You see that? You saw what I did there? I said they go unknown or masked. The metal face. But I also said dark ages moments. In 04, everyone was loading the diluted pop of College Dropout, while Mad Villainy innovated through hip-hop underground where the music was left to die. Those same loading lovers of lackluster lacings are ones absorbing Gibbs' hot take as truth. So rewind real, reveal right. Here's the thing, right? I'm going to kick you a rap. It was Doom rap. I know my producer will appreciate this because he's a Doom fan. Here's the thing. Doom and Gibbs are totally different rappers, and sometimes the differences are things that Doom has already dissed. There are things that Gibbs does that Doom has already pre-dissed Gibbs for. Remember this? What up? To all rappers, shut up with your shutting up and keep your shirt on, at least a button up. Yuck. Is they rhymers are stripping males, out of work jerks since they shut down Chippendales. They chipping nails, Doom, tipping scales, let alone the pre-orders that counting off shipping sales. This one goes out to all my people skipping bail, dipping jail, whipping tail, and zipping ale. I just did the whole thing because it was dope. But I was talking about when you see Gibbs today, he's the antithesis of what Doom was rhyming about. Gibbs is out there with his shirt off, flexing the chisel, and rhyming all sweaty and shit, rhyming for chicks. And the thing is, though, is that it's not, Gibbs is rhyming. Those are bars. Those are bars. You know what I mean? And I'll say this, though, right? I said this. Let me find exactly what I said. I just want to keep it there before I go into this Doom thing. And it's more important that I talk about Doom than Gibbs because I could talk about Gibbs next time. But I said this ultimately about Gibbs. I said Gibbs is a sincere MC and his great fury. Here's why. I'm going to be honest, though, because my producer's here and he knows I'm a hater, a jigga hater. I saw an interview with Gibbs, and Gibbs said that he was in the studio when he was recording this, Bandana. And some of the other brothers that was with him there, they was talking about Jay-Z and how great MC he was. He's such a legend and shit. And Gibbs is about to go in the studio. He's getting pissed off. Gibbs says, I'm getting pissed off. You know, I'm supposed to do my shit. And they're talking about some other nigga. You know, he's like, all praises due to Jay-Z. He's great and everything. But, I'm trying to knock everything out the box, though. You know what I mean? Stop talking about other niggas. You know what I mean? I like that. That immediately ingratiated me with Gibbs. You know what I mean? Gibbs cares about the lyrics, though. He's really trying to write lyrics. You know what I mean? But in this case, he said that he was better. He didn't say that he's a lyricist and he can hang with Doom and he's up there with Doom. I give him all of that if he wants to make that claim. Although up there is a wide universe. It's a wide universe. But he said he was better than Doom. So let's correct that error right now. You know what I mean? Because I said this. I said that Gibbs doesn't want to hear about other people's legacies. He wears horse blinders, which I like. I don't think it works to shit on anything directly, even if you way better. And I think it's wrong to say he was better than Doom. But he really is an MC saying more and more and always keeps to his skill sets. The media today literally interviews MCs and asks them what they think about other people's shit and what other current music they like. And that's the absolute last thing that an artist needs to be asked. They don't want to hear shit about, what do you like out there? Imagine if I had an MC, I'd bring him up here. He's never been interviewed and say, hey, what do you think about Old Town Road? What type of bitch shit is that? Nobody wants to hear if they like the same shit. We're not here girls talk about other boys. You know what I'm saying? We're not high school girls talking about other boys in class and shit. We're talking about the works that they put out and what works, how they made them. Talk about that. When they're not there, you rank them. You put them in context. You do all that. But If the guy's right there saying he's better than Doom, you better question that shit right up there. You know what I mean? I'm gonna tell you something. Let's talk about this. This will be a classic Crate Small segment. Mad Villainy. A lot of people don't know that when Mad Villain was coming out though, it was leaked. This is past 1999. Loot Pack blew us away on the East Coast because there's a different way of using the bass. There was a different level of crates that was re-inspiring us, though, that Madlib was doing on those Loot Pack sound pieces, the Antidote. And what happened was, I can remember the magazines weren't fucking with that. It was a New York City crate that we was loving. And by the time 2004 came, two of the greatest beat makers in the 2000s were Doom and Madlib. So MF Doom didn't need Madlib. He didn't need Madlib. So just like that, Doom does something totally different. And some of those songs leaked. Early versions of Mad Villainy leaked. And if you remember what people noticed out of contrast, this is before this era. This didn't happen. There's no ethos. There's no slow flowers. That extreme slow flow. And compared to what Doom was doing on Doomsday, King Ghidorah, and the Victor Vaughn of the year prior, the Mad Villainy leaks, we all thought that, is it possible that these leaks were leaked where they weren't EQ'd or mastered or finished, because they sound like Doom is rhyming way slower. And when the album came out, it was true. The flow was totally much slower. Doom is an innovator, not of so many techniques, and one of them, though, particularly with this Mad Villainy album, is slowing down the verse even more BPMs. It's something that isn't noticed because we tend to look at Rakim and then go into Guru and KRS and Jizza and say that's where the slow flow ended. The shit got slower. Some MCs, if you hear them, they go, yeah, I like that shit at like 70 BPM. 70 fucking BPMs? 70 BPMs? Take a soul record and slow it down to 70 BPMs. You know what I mean? How slow that shit sounds. You know what I mean? It'll sound like this. You know what I mean? Like you won't even hear, you won't even get the vocals. By 2004, Doom is already in the peak of one of the greatest runs of MCing you'll ever hear. From 1999 into 2000 through 2004. Okay? Doom brought certain things back into music again. Music was getting flashy. It was getting flashy. It was losing its grit. Doom was rhyming off chops that he didn't fix. He left them looped. He left them gritty. He filtered the drums but didn't fix them. The same drum might sound differently on the next bar when he was rhyming. And the way he rhymed had the same type of grit. There was no rhyme or reason. The stream of conscious was extreme. People talk about Supreme Clientele, but Doomsday is almost as stream of conscious as Supreme Clientele. So when we talk about like people like the resurgence of the greatness, the peak of the legend of Sean Price, Doom has something to do with that. These are influential records. And when Mad Villain comes out, it's a peak of that because Doom is on fire. Like his verses, they're perfect. And to revive the underground where it was literally just becoming flashy shit or just drug shit, you had the perfect persona of the everyday, down and out, no fucks giving black man. And this influences the character of Sean P., everybody else. There's also the out-of-pocket pioneers that come out in the 90s. One of them, though, is, for example, Thurston Howell III, who rhymes out of pocket. Most of the songs that Thurston Howell has are out of pocket. They create a pocket outside of the normal pocket in the breakbeats groove. So they don't need any of the instruments, and yet you can find what part of the song that he is on. They even precursor the way Rock Marciano sometimes uses no groove on anything. No groove at all. You don't even know where the fuck the pocket is, you know? But Doom's innovation is that he was inside a pocket, but inside the pocket at all times, flowing with you, but not in the expected tempo that you would guess out of that pocket. And that's what Mad Villainy did. It showed you that you could rhyme in the pocket, but totally out of tempo with the expectation of the BPM of that song. That shit's crazy. You gotta listen to that shit again. You know what I mean? And Bandana, I'm gonna save this as a part 2 for next week, but because I just want to talk about Mad Villainy while we close this out. But Bandana's not fucking with the bars on Mad Villainy. Strange ways. They pray 4 times a day. They pray 5. Who weighs a stranger when it's time to survive? Some will go of their own free will to die. Others take them with you when they blow sky high. What's the difference? All you get is lost children. The Figaro shit. The rest is empty with no brain, but the clever nerd, the best MC with no chain you ever heard. That is one of the great quotables of the entire Dark Ages. The best MC with no chain you ever heard. That was in direct contrast to the flashy bling shit of the entire Dark Ages. These became mantras in the underground. You know what I mean? And the way that Doom was flowing on certain breaks, a shot of Jack got her back. It's not an act stack. Forget about the cackalack, holla black, clack, clack, block of villainy. Feel him in your heart chakra, chart topper. Start shit, stopper, be a smart shopper. The motherfucker was flowing in a pocket at an unexpected tempo. The shit like Meat Grinder. The way he was starting off with different words. We talk about people like legends in this, like the way Prodigy used to start off with so many great bars. Doom was starting off with such great word choices. Tripping off the beat, kinda. Dripping off the meat grinder. Heat niner, pimping, stripping. Soft, sweet minor. One of the greatest internal displays of internal rhyming that you will hear on record is on Mad Villainy. As next week, I'm going to go into Bandana's record even more so than I was about to, because I have time now to even add some more stuff and relate it back to this. But the stuff that I'm showing you here, Bandana does not do. Bandana does not innovate. You know what I mean? And it's not fair to Gibbs. It's not fair to himself to compare him to somebody that innovated so much. You know what I mean? That to me, just personally, I can't get too mad, but it kind of was a shame that all Madlib could get in there, because he's not a talker, would say like, well, you know, he was saying that there was 2 different MCs. But the truth is that they're 2 different legacies. Gibbs right now in the 2000s, his entire decade, he rocked this entire decade. Doom. Gibbs. He was dope. But his legacy is one of the better MCs in this invisible renaissance. An honorable mention, but not an essential. Maybe he's close to essential because of Bandana and the Piano add up. So he gives it a late run. But he didn't dominate the decade like Doom. Not even close. You know, the 2000s was so bullshit. If it wasn't for Doom, I'm going to get into this more next time. You know what I mean? But everything I'm going to say now is going to end up being about Madlib and Gibbs, and we're going to talk about that record and further put it into context. But we'll leave that as a classic crate, because if you're really thinking that Gibbs is better than Doom, your collection sucks. And if you even hear these records, though, your ears are not good enough. You better listen. You got to listen. You know what I mean? This is music on a stellar level. You know what I mean? But on that note, go get your Doomsday lunchbox. Anybody else got a lunchbox? That's the trivia question, you know, of the night. You know, anybody else got a lunchbox like that? But like Doomsday. I didn't even talk about Doomsday. I don't have to. But anyway, until next time, we'll get into Gibbs, all of that. We'll get into other music. A lot of that. I haven't even talked about NEMS. You know what I mean? NEMS. you know. But and a lot of other great records, the new Sons of Man record, all of that, you know what I mean? The new a lot of other new stuff. There was something else new that was dope. And next time we'll talk about that new Nas record, Lost Tapes. I should have heard it by then. But until next time, there'll be a lot more stories to tell, writings to recite, and records to rewind and reminisce. I'm your host, Sunez, aka S.STREET Low. And as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.